Two of my closest friends, Trevor and Kevin, always loved to go on late-night adventures. I have so many fond memories going on creepy midnight exploration sessions with them, but I also have some not-so-great ones. The worst experience, however, was the night we went to Joyland Amusement Park in Kansas, an abandoned park surrounded by a somewhat typical suburban area. We lived only 10 minutes away from the park, so we figured it would be our next late-night destination. We always brought our Phoenix flashlights, backpacks, and boots whenever we went to places like this. Today, mostly everything in Joyland Amusement Park has been torn down, but this was back in 2011 or 2012, and at that time, most of the buildings and rides were still standing. We pulled up on a side road next to the parking lot, since it seemed a lot less sketchy than pulling up into the parking lot itself. Then we figured we should just pull up onto the grass next to the woods by the park, because God forbid a cop would drive down the road. Kevin led the way, while Trevor and I followed behind, talking to each other and sometimes joking about how much more eager Kevin was to move ahead than we were. We kept our voices low, however, because we never knew if there might still be security in places like this. All the carnival shacks that once held concessions and games had now been ransacked, trashed with cans and bottles, and sprayed with graffiti. It was basically the scene you would expect to see in an amusement park that had been abandoned for years. Even though the park was surrounded by suburbs, it was kind of encased by woods in almost all directions, so instead of late-night traffic, all we heard were crickets and other night creatures. It added to the experience because, to be honest, all three of us, in a certain way, liked being freaked out. We walked into another carnival game stand, this one with paintings at the top still not completely worn away or graffitied over. It had some smiling cartoon character holding a dart gun, so I guessed it was some kind of target-hitting game. Now it was just rubble and litter on the grounds. Suddenly, there was the sound of a glass bottle breaking, not too far away. When we turned in that direction, it became clear it definitely came from the bigger-looking building. Perplexed and kind of shaken, the three of us went in that direction. We stopped probably 2/3 of the way there when we saw someone standing in the corner of what was once called the Wacky Shack attraction. The person was legitimately just standing, facing the corner wall at the entrance. I whispered to my friends to back away slowly. There was clearly something wrong with this person, and we didn't want them to hear us. We backed away, trying to avoid making any noise. It was almost like something out of a cliché horror movie when either Kevin or Trevor stepped on a beer can, which made a really loud crunch. The person standing in the corner turned their head and looked at us. But the speed with which they turned their head was what really scared me. It was almost like a deer. We could now see it was a man. He hadn't arranged to look on his face. The three of us simply walked quickly away. We didn't run, because that would only be more cause for this person to chase us. We made it to the woods where we would cut through to get to the car. Halfway there, Kevin looked back and muttered, "Oh." We looked back and saw the guy just standing stiff next to a tree in the distance, a few meters away. Running seemed like our only sensible option at this point. It didn't take long before we were at the car. We screamed at Kevin to unlock it as he fumbled for his keys. As we got into the car and looked out the windows, we could all see him again, this time once again standing stiff like a statue, hunched over by the tree line to the woods. Kevin drove off, and Trevor and I screamed out taunts to the man. That didn't mean we weren't still absolutely shaken. Permanently, it's scary to think that none of us ever actually saw that weird man move. He seemed to always be standing still whenever we saw him. I was taking my family on a road trip to South Florida. It was a long 2-day drive, and I could tell my kids were getting restless. I saw a sign for an amusement park zoom by on the parkway, so I figured I'd treat my kids and take them to an amusement park for a couple of hours. It was late already anyway, so we were just going to stop at the hotel soon. I figured I might as well. My wife and I followed our 2 kids, Tommy, 7, and Trish, 5. They ran ahead of us to find a ride they wanted to go on. I had to admit, this was one pathetic-looking amusement park. There weren't many other people there. There weren't many attractions either. More than half of what appeared to once be attractions and games were now just empty stands and buildings. As long as the kids were happy, though, that's all that really mattered. Tommy was running so far ahead, pointing at one of the rides ahead in the dark. I thought for sure he was pointing to the Ferris wheel, but when he made an unexpected turn left and went out of sight, my wife and I screamed for him to come back immediately. When he didn't come back, I told my wife to wait there with Trish while I ran as fast as I could to chase after Tommy. I couldn't find him anywhere, though. My heart began to race. The feeling of losing your small child is a painfully scary feeling that will literally make you feel sick inside. I stood in place, looking around in a full 360-degree motion, breathing heavily, afraid someone might have taken my son. I ran to the nearest worker I could find and gave them my son's description. They called on a loudspeaker for Tommy to come to the front entrance. In the meantime, I still ran all over the place searching for him. I stopped dead in my tracks and felt my heart drop when I found him. He was over by a wall of bushes next to a bathroom building. He was talking to someone who was apparently in the bushes. Then it looked like he was being pulled into the bushes. I screamed Tommy's name as I ran for the bushes. There was nobody around to serve as a witness or help me. I got to the bushes and found Tommy talking to someone. I didn't hear the other person's voice, though. I pushed my way through the bushes and saw Tommy being pulled. I didn't see by who, though. I ran to him and pulled him. But I felt something else on the other side of another layer of bushes, pulling him in that direction. But quickly, whatever it was let go, and I pulled Tommy into my arms. I told him to wait there as I pushed my way through more bushes to a small opening surrounded by trees. There was no one in sight. I had no idea how whoever it was could have gotten away that quickly. I still don't. When I got back to my son, I took him back to the public area of the park and put my hands on his shoulders, shaking him as I asked him who he was walking with. He said he was following some guy named George. He said George was a lot older than him. I took him back to the front entrance of the amusement park and had him describe George to the workers. They said they'd keep a sharp lookout for him, and we promptly left the park. We went straight to a hotel, and the rest of our trip from there was normal, except for the fact that I couldn't get the incident out of my head. I used to work at a little theme park called Thrill Ville USA. No. Not the video game. There was an actual amusement park called Thrill Ville. It was very tiny and secluded, though, so don't picture a big place like Six Flags or something in your head. I never enjoyed working there because my shift would always be something different every day. And there was an insane amount of weirdos there, but that's irrelevant. The park closed in 2007, and ever since, I've been moving from job to job in the small, crappy town. One cloudy evening on my own in 2009, I decided it would be fun to go check out what had become of Thrill Ville since it had been shut down and abandoned for 2 years. At the time, I pulled up to the parking lot, which was, of course, empty. The grass surrounding the park was now overgrown, waving around in the breeze, suggesting an incoming storm. Sneaking in was easy, considering it wasn't fenced off or anything. but it was clear some things had already been torn down. Still, at the time, mostly everything was still standing, but it had become so much creepier. I began to feel tiny rain droplets, but I didn't really care. I was dressed for rain anyway. Walking around the park was creepy, but the first really disturbing thing didn't actually happen until I heard something scutter behind me. To be honest, I couldn't tell if it was a person or an animal, but something was definitely there. I didn't see anything though, so I just pressed onward, choosing to ignore it. I was snapping constant pictures with my Canon camera that I took along, because for a few months I was kind of into photography as a passing interest. I snapped away at different buildings, the defunct roller coaster, the big old yellow slide that was now covered in mud stains, then the buildings like the bathrooms, the main office, and various maintenance shacks. I decided I would start with the bathrooms. I don't know why I thought that would be interesting, but I did. I stepped into the men's side of the bathrooms, which was obviously pitch black inside. The lights no longer worked, so I had to turn on the flash on my camera. Kind of like that scene from the first Saw movie. I took a picture of the sink and mirror to check the image quality. The light flash on my camera was very bright, so pictures in the dark always came out clear. Then I heard the slightest little ting sound coming from the side of the bathroom. At the stalls, I called out, "Someone in here?" There were 2 stalls from what I remember. I went over to the first stall and pushed the door open slowly. I aimed my camera into the stall and took the picture. The light revealed nothing but a toilet. I moved on to the next stall and pushed the door open. With this one, I was having trouble drawing up the nerve to take the picture. I took about 5 seconds before I pressed the button and the camera light flashed. In that brief moment of light, I saw a tall figure looming down at me. I shut the stall door and screamed as I ran back outside to the light and to my car. When I got to my car, I checked the picture I captured in that stall. The picture showed a figure, probably 6'3", standing in front of the toilet. But for some reason the face was blurry. I couldn't see any distinguishing features, but it seemed to be a man. As I browsed through some of the other photos, I picked up on something disturbing. In 4 photos out of 10, I found what appeared to be a person hiding somewhere in the distance, but always seemed to be staring at me. In 2 pictures, the person was in the woods, and in 2 others, they were behind buildings or rides. I never sent those pictures from my camera onto my computer, but I think they're still on the camera. I just haven't seen them in years. They might be in my attic. If I find them, I'll post them online, but I quite frankly never want to see that picture again.